Hi, Subhendu. Good morning. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Prashant. Thanks for having me.
So, very excited to talk about a theme which is very close to my heart in a way. Having played analyst relations role in the past, 10 years from now, will we still need analysts or will we be our own analyst using co-pilots kind of scenario? And no one else can be better to cover this theme because you are the one who has seen both sides of the world. So, shall we begin?
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic question, but I'll answer it as we proceed.
Okay, perfect. So let's probably hit it with a very straightforward thing. Having been both an analyst and vendor side earlier and now, what was the biggest mindset shift you had to make, especially with how influence is measured today?
Hmm. Okay. So both of them are actually one other side of the table, right? So when you are an analyst, you are starting to look at information very objectively, and you try to see what is real, what is not, what is being presented, but truly, is it really solving a customer's problem? And then you start evaluating them, positioning them, and some of that comes in. On the other side, on the vendor side, you are actually taking very focused view of how you can take what you have to the market to make sure that it is trying to solve a customer's problem. So on one side, it is being unbiased, impartial, making sure that you are evaluating, benchmarking everything and having a broader market view. And on the other side, you are very focused, narrow focused on one specific customer problem which your product is solving. How can you make sure that you take it to the market and you can deliver that to the customer? Which are the channels? So these are the two basic set of differences, but it looks easy to say but very difficult to do when you are actually on both sides.
True. And as an analyst, all of these guys are your customer in a way. So you have to listen them patiently and kind of figure out the right positioning in the overall mosaic that you want to project as part of your analysis, right?
Yeah, that is true. And see, while customers is on one side, see, the ultimate objective of being an analyst is to provide information with that human touch, with that human ingenuity, which makes it useful, for the end user. Right. So analysts work with two different set of stakeholders. One on the business side, who are really looking for advice, and that's where all of your reports and everything talk about the buyer, what are their preferences. And on the other side, you have the vendors who are focused on how can I deliver value to each of these buyers now that I am aware of their purchase decisions or buying behavior. So both are different stakeholders. I would not say which one is a customer, which one is a not. So an analyst's job is to make sure that you take information what you hear from the market, give it to the providers, give it to the buyers, so that they are able to know which are the providers out there who can deliver a solution for my problems. And on the other side, take the perspective from the buyers and make sure that you give that to the providers so that they know what are the challenges, what are the solutions which they have to build to meet some of the buyers challenges. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at the history of last 2 decades, Shubhendu, the analysts used to hold significant power because of information. They would get information from all the vendors and they would hear the market so that they are the best person to map the solution to market needs. In a world which is more peer review driven, LinkedIn influencers, AI generated insights, what is the real value that an analyst can offer today that a GPT kind of scenario cannot? So it's more like, where do you see true analyst influence still holding power? And what are the areas where you see that it is slowly eroding?
Interesting question, and I'm sure this would be on the minds of many. And when GPT came about 2 years back, and started magically creating some of these research and all of that, it was kind of a little worrisome as well to understand, to figure out where GPT plays in. But now we have seen almost 2.5 year plus, where GPT and all of these new models have come in. We are also seeing G2 and all of these other platforms which are providing peer reviews and all of that. The way to look at this is to understand what are buyers looking for, right? Are they looking at only one information source? Are they looking at multiple information source, right? And who are buyers, right? If we wear the enterprise buyer's hat ourselves, and let's say I'm in marketing and I want to take a marketing automation software, I become a buyer, right? So what am I looking for? I'm looking for objective information which can help me understand that there are real solutions out there, people are really using it, and if I use it, if I take the decision of procuring that particular product for my organization, it is not going to create a dent on my reputation, right? So it is not risky, right? So that's the second. The third is, am I doing the right thing? Am I really looking at solving the right problem, right? So each of these cannot be obtained with one source alone, right? If you take the fact of, the matter of fact, G2 or even Gartner peer insights, they provide peer insights. You have to go through and user sentiments and all of that, which is very good. But user sentiments are from their context, right? It's from the context of that specific user. Your situation, even though you are in the same industry, a company, a pharma company, if it is about 100 million versus if it is 1 billion or 10 billion, the challenges are very different. When you look at user reviews, of course, you can definitely go to some of these platforms to go through thousands of reviews and try to see which ones of those are relevant to you, are of your size, have similar problems. And it is not just the size problem. There can be a culture problem. There can be an infrastructure stack problem. There can be, a direction problem. There are so many areas which a person has to look at. So only G2 or peer insights will not suffice. Then you would say that, all right, so I would start looking at my AI and start to gain some insights from that. Now, AI or Gen AI is able to deliver the market insights in a really good way. But understand it this way, that it would not be able to, first of all, it is backward looking. So it's based on historical data, something which has already been expressed and published or spoken, somewhere it is recorded online. That is what is the base for all of this AI and GPT. There are a lot of things which are there in my mind as a buyer, which I have not shared publicly because that may not be the right ones, right? And trust me, analysts have access to this information because I confide in them. Because when I think analysts are my partners in my growth journey, I would tap into them and say that, what, this is what my challenge is, this is what I am doing. What do you think really makes sense? So, irrespective of whether GPT provides you information within 10 minutes or 10 seconds, you would still need to have somebody look at the problem which you have, apply human intuition and judgment to be able to then make sense of the information out there. I see reports by certain, analysts firms already, which was interesting, saying that analyst relations probably would not live for the next couple of years. I strongly disagree. It will not live if it is focused on just curating information from somewhere and then collating that and sharing it as a report, heavily relying on GPT and all of that will not work. But then the networks are not going to go away anywhere, Prashant. For me, if I have deep relationships with real buyers and which has developed over a period of time, no GPT can take that away. And the way they will confide information in me as an analyst will be way higher than they would really want to express themselves out on a post, a LinkedIn post or something somewhere. So I think analyst relations is going to get sharper, crisper. And when there is this information overload, today every feed, every LinkedIn feed post which you talk about, which you see, tell me, out of 100 of those posts, how many are non AI, Prashant?
Very few, I think. It's a single digit percentages, so to say. I mean,
Yeah.
there
So
is a touch of AI everywhere.
yeah.
Because
So having
there's
said
a lot
that,
of
where
FOMO
will
that what if I'm doing something wrong, and people run everything by AI these days. What if there is an extra line added? What if there is some English correction? What if there is an instance of something that can be added? So it's like everything is going through AI engine.
that's true. That's true. No, and people, um, uh, we are not thinking in complete sentences anymore. That's the worrisome factor. We are thinking in fragments, right? We have 10 things, and we feel that all those fragments we put in, and then the email comes out really well. Our Over a longer period of time, it is probably a challenge which has to be solved by humanity than by analysts alone. That how do we solve this problem of thinking in entirety rather than in fragments? So yeah, that's where we are.
It's an interesting perspective. I mean, when industrial revolution happened, we created a lot of industrial waste, which is being solved now, whether it is greenhouse emission, whether it is environmental issues. So probably same thing is happening with AI. We are creating a lot of clutter, which probably after a decade or so, there will be new set of startups coming in to declutter AI. Something like
Uh,
that can very well
yeah,
happen.
very interesting thought, and I agree. We have actually we are living on debt, and
Yes.
that debt is from the future generations, right? So talk about plastics, what we are consuming today. We have started becoming aware of it, trying to reduce, but it's borrowed time from the future generations. That's where we are. So yeah, absolutely with you. So something like that can happen.
So let's continue this theme of analyst insights a bit further. And if you were to push it, there are, in my experience, when I was handling analyst relations at one of my past employer, we would categorize different analysts into different buckets, right? Some of them will be very sharp and very focused, and those 30 minutes will be like worth of a time. But then there will be some analysts who are somewhat slow, more jargon heavy, right? So what does authentic high value analysis look like in 2025 onwards? And as a vendor, right? How can those who are managing analyst relations can enable that?
Okay. Interesting question. And I agree, every human being is different. So analysts, are human beings after all. And so when there are some analysts who are really objective, they stay focused to the point, they deliver precise research. There are some who probably have a slightly different way of representation, right? So in 2025 and beyond, like we know, basic research, basic way of representation, competitor analysis, or comparing my product features with another competitor's features. These kind of analysis probably will be done better through a GPT or a, AI, Gen AI, if we say it right, a kind of a mechanism. But wherever it comes to, let's say, taking a guidance from an analyst in terms of what should my market positioning be, what should my go-to-market strategy be, right? Looking forward. For example, as an organization, you might have 3 or 4 products which you are thinking of, you are not really sure, but there are some dots in your mind and you have not yet expressed. So basically, it's not yet out there. And then and you don't want to go public with that yet. You want to build on one, you want to take benefits of that or inputs from that to the next model, to the next one. Somebody has to be there to connect these dots. And that is where analysts will continue to play a huge role. Today, as of now, GPT is able to do something um, which is probably 100 analysts, 100 basic level analysts would not have been able to do in 3 weeks. With GPT is able to do that in 10 minutes kind of a time frame. But that is getting sense of all of the hundreds of reports which are out there, websites out there, read it, summarize it, write it in the right way. But objective research, which just does not say what about it, but it also says how do you react to it, right? Some of that will continue to be very analyst driven, and that is what should be the view.
Actually, what you said really resonates, right? Nowadays, AI is more like a secretary. Everybody has a secretary of their own who is smarter, intelligent, who knows you probably more than you know yourself. Because the more data you feed, it builds a perspective on you. And a lot of analysts analysis type of work can be given to ChatGPT. But then what to analyze, how to analyze still stays with analysts. And that is where the value is delivered in future, right?
Correct.
So when you were running analyst functions, there are certain things that you do as part of playbook that you get to listen and understand as you talk to more analysts. But when you move to Forrester and vendors were coming to brief you about their capabilities, are there some stories from that side of the table where you had a lasting impression coming from some of the vendors who were creative in bringing the information to you? So to say, they played the AR game better than anybody else. And what were the key elements in that?
Okay, I think very interesting question, and I have been surprised and pleasantly surprised by the way certain firms, I would not name them, but certain firms really did the overall AR piece. But to take a step back, Prashant, it is not just about the way AR is done. It is about what you are trying to accomplish through this analyst solutions program, right? The way is important, but if you just focus on the way, I have seen providers who do huge events, analyst days, who do detailed briefings and all of that. They do inquiries as well, to get the feedback, about a particular product. But when you hear the briefing after 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, rarely any of those inputs from the inquiries have actually gone into the product. So they are focusing on the process, but they have forgotten the objective of why they had the process in place in the first place, right? So I think the objective has to be, if you consider the analyst as the only person to influence, that's a wrong objective. The objective has to be to enable the analyst to influence the buyers or to help the buyers, to equip the buyers. The perspective is that is when you know that you are aiming for the right objective to accomplish from the analyst relations practice. Analyst's job is to help buyers solve a particular problem. If your solutions, whatever you have, they don't have the features to solve them, then better hear that from the analyst, understand it, build it, then showcase the demo or the briefing which talks about how can it now very uniquely solve the same challenge of the buyer. That's when in conversations an analyst would remember, it would stay top of mind. Top of mind is not sending out 10 newsletters, doing analyst days. Top of mind is, you may have just said it once, but the analyst grasps it because they know that they are trying to solve the buyer's problem.
Yeah.
And they are aware of the problem. So when they see a solution, it just sticks. So you don't have to, so mechanically doing something versus knowing what you are doing, why you are doing it, is the basic difference. You have to look at an analyst as a partner who can guide you, who can, it's not just that an analyst is going to rate you. That is not, I mean, that's part of the process. But then analyst also, if somebody is really engaged, if somebody has a real challenge, analyst will go out of the way to share insights that, this is something which you would want to build in your product, in your service, in your offering. So that's what I would say, that those are good AR programs which understand the true objective and also follow it up with execution over a period of.
Right. The bios of action is more important than the follow-ups and following a template. Template without action doesn't help. That's a very strong point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, action as well as the intent, right? So that is what is relevant.
Yeah, it's like a two-way value creation process. So whatever you're picking up from analysts, use it to create value
Yeah.
and share it back so that overall market is shaped and you get benefit out of it. Because one of the roles that analysts can play is shaping the market because they are talking to buyers directly and unfiltered versus the
That's true.
vendors who are playing a game of probably somewhat asymmetrical information.
Yeah, I mean, see, like I said, been on the both sides. So the objectives of the rules are different. On one side, it is objective evaluation. On the other side, it is making sure that how can I turn, twist, build, create, rebuild, redefine, reimagine my product to solve a particular problem. So the KRAs are different, the KPIs are different. Everybody is playing their role. But yeah.
Analyst relations. So there are different tiers of organizations, and it is thought that it is definitely valuable for large organizations where it's more like an elephant, different parts, different owners. But then how can a mid-size or a small size company can start getting value out of analyst relations? Because a lot of time I feel that it becomes more like following the template versus extracting the value. So is there anything that small to mid-size companies, emerging to mid-size vendors can approach analyst relations in a different way than the existing incumbent? And if AI can do some of that, can help fast track the process of value generation. What are your thoughts on that?
So I'll give you some examples or some thoughts which I had, and as an analyst, you will start observing a lot of companies, irrespective of the size of the company. If they are doing something really cutting edge, right? I'll always go back to the buyer's example where you have the buyer's problems in mind, because on a day in and day out, I used to speak to hundreds of buyers in a month. So in over a longer period of time, you get to understand that these are some of the very pertinent challenges which are out there. And then when you are scrolling through your LinkedIn feeds, you are reading an article somewhere, there is a reference of certain company which is doing something, irrespective of the size of their company. If they have done something really well, you would click on it, you would read it. and then you'd try to get a view of what they are trying to solve. And then, even though the company is small, you may want to subscribe and try to see if you can get a briefing from them in terms of what they are doing. So now flip that to the other side. If a company wants to get the attention of an analyst, what is the best way, even though you haven't, really taken a subscription, gotten started, and all of that? The first thing is that analysts published a lot of blogs. It's their perspective. They talk about it, right? What is, and they have used certain data points to come to conclusion about each of that. You have gone through that. Now, after you read a particular, so the intent is not to, the intent is not to just get along with an analyst. The intent is to really use that information, whatever the analyst has shared, for your benefit to solve a problem better, right? So read once a company, individual reads the blog or some article somewhere, try to make a perception. What is your perception about it from data points which are outside the research scope of that particular analyst, right? And then, based on whatever you find, you either will have a positive point of view towards that article or a negative one. For example, if some analyst says that agentic AI is going to rule the world, and they have given data points, you find that agentic AI is not going to rule the world because of governance issues, hallucination issues, culture issues, and whatever, right? If you really have a strong point of view and you put that point of view out, I'm sure the analyst would love to take a look at the contra view as well. And if you do not want to take a contra view, you can also have a very positive view about the analyst based on further supporting data and evidence, which were not part of the analyst research. Whenever I see providers doing this, I have been very fascinated about the thought process which is driving the organization. And then I start tracking those organizations. So I feel that, for someone just getting started, getting a product validation is absolutely critical. Understanding of the product market fit validated through an analyst is very, very critical. Second point is, what should my messaging be? If I do not understand the buyer's problems, then my messaging will be very generic. If I know the problem, I'll be able to articulate it way better. So that's my second point why you should be speaking to an analyst. And the third, of course, is to make sure that whatever you have put together, whatever messaging you have, is being visible to a third party, neutral, highly authoritative individual or group of individual or firm, which can then take your, and they will not be advocates in open public conversations. However, there are conversations an analyst has one-on-one
Yeah.
with buyers, right? In some of those situations, the analyst will remember how different your problem is. They will not remember how many times you have done briefings with them about a product which does not make sense, but they will remember a one product which they read about somewhere and mention it to a buyer. So you are not aware of the buyer, you are not aware of this conversation, but you have done something very unique with a great point of view, and you are showing that up, consistently through your different assets which you own. That itself is a great start to the analyst relations piece. I have been fascinated by how people keep doing this very uniquely, very creatively, and with that learning, now I'm trying to do something differently in Covasant, where I'm working today as the chief marketing officer. So yeah, that's how the journey is. Thank you, Prashant.
Very interesting. I think it's like saying that on LinkedIn post, if you do commenting for better reach, that doesn't help. Versus if you actually read what is being said and if you have a point of view, put it across and then you'll be remembered.
See, I'll say this, Prashant, and I'm very old school, but hard work is what is needed for everything, for every success which you aspire to. And I feel that commenting for better reach or liking the post and thinking that the analyst has seen it, it is very, very difficult. But when you see a different point of view, or when you see a supporting point of view with another data point, that really feels that okay, these guys are doing something, and then you start tracking them, following them. So absolutely, hard work, yes.
Hard work, not everything requires money to be spent, but thought definitely needs to be given so that you can stand out from the crowd. Absolutely a great point of view there, Shubhendu. One last thing. You've done your PhD and you're Dr. Shubhendu Pattnaik. So, what were the thought process? What made you do PhD mid-career almost? And how has the experience been? This is more like for the student segment of my podcast.
Okay. See, PhD it's not a educational aspiration, or it's not a certificate which you should have and things like that. PhD introduces you to a very different thought process. It tells you that you are what you are by standing on the shoulder of giants. What that means is you take the body of literature, what is already there, the research which is already out there. How can you use and join the dots between everything which is already out there and try to uncover something else which is so right there in the face, but nobody has really tried to explain it? If you can do that, that is unique creative research. I always felt that, is there something which I would be able to build? And I have been in marketing for whole my life. So when I look at a marketing problem, I started getting fascinated into the area of research after I started reading the academic papers. And then I saw that how every sentence has to be grounded in reality, grounded in research, then only that claims can be made. Very different from a marketing world where you actually add on,
Stretch
the
the thing.
narrative. But here, on one other side, you had everything grounded in research. So that's when I got, attracted to that as an area. And after I went through the experience, of course, it took a much longer time than everybody else because I was managing my role as a CMO at Signity while I was doing this. But the experience was fantastic. And today, my ability to grasp the changes which are happening out there and was is very very different. And as an analyst, when I started looking at all of this, what providers are providing, I was able to create an objective framework of evaluation for myself so that I can make better sense of what I'm reading, what I'm consuming. So that came in handy. And still, that's a learning for life. So it's going to stay with me. So I think somebody who's looking at PhD shouldn't be looking at PhD from a academic qualification perspective. But if they really are keen to contribute something to the world of research and also to the world of practitioners who are going to use that research in some form or the other later, that is when they should start thinking of a PhD if they are already.
That is amazing. Lovely conversation, Shubhendu. Thank you so much for taking out time on a weekend morning.
Problem.
And look forward to see how this episode adds value to my podcast listeners. Let's stay in touch, and hopefully we'll have one more session, maybe after a couple of quarters, to
Sure.
see how things are shaping in the era of AI. Because I feel it is still too early to start talking about AI. After 3 4 quarters, we'll have more clarity. Like in last 2.5 years, a lot has changed, and now it's more like working on past knowledge. You need something else to be able to perform in real time, right? So
For trying to take in my perspective. I have been through all of your podcasts, and every speaker has a very unique way in which they have conducted themselves, and their perspectives are very different as well. I have thoroughly enjoyed. I hope this episode is able to live up to the expectations of your viewers who are watching this. But thank you once again for this opportunity. Looking forward to be here again soon whenever you invite me.
absolutely. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Prashant.